All right, so you sent over some really interesting research this time on phishing, specifically brand impersonation.
Yeah.
It seems like you're ready to dive headfirst into cybersecurity.
Buckle up.
We've got excerpts from a master's thesis
Okay.
that compares two different phishing detection methods.
Interesting.
One is a cutting-edge large language model called Gemini,
Johnny Ed.
and the other one is a more traditional rule-based system,
Ah, okay.
kind of like AI versus old-school programming.
Yeah, and what's so fascinating is how these different approaches really highlight the evolving nature of cybersecurity.
Right.
It's not just about catching the obvious bad guys anymore.
Right.
You have to understand the nuances of language and human behavior.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what we're going to unpack in this deep dive.
Yeah.
By the end of this, you'll have a solid grasp of how these systems work,
Okay.
their strengths and weaknesses, and most importantly, how to spot those sneaky phishing emails that are getting harder and harder to detect.
Because knowledge is the best defense, right?
Absolutely. So let's start with Phishing 101.
Okay.
We all know that phishing is about tricking people
Yeah.
into giving up their sensitive information.
Right.
But how do they actually do it? Well, they exploit those tiny little details in emails that we often overlook.
Okay.
They manipulate the aegis from address, reply to, even those hidden headers that most people don't even know exist.
And they're using techniques like spoofing.
Spoofing.
Yeah, basically forging those fields to make the email look like it's from a trusted source.
Like if you get an email that seems to be from your bank,
Right.
but the sender's address is slightly off.
Yes.
So instead of support@hoxhunt.com, it's support@a0xhunt.com.
Oh, wow.
It's easy to miss if you're not paying close attention.
Absolutely. And that's just one example.
Right.
There's type of squatting, where attackers register domains that are very similar to legitimate ones, hoping that you'll mistype the address.
Interesting. The thesis also mentions combo squatting.
Combo squatting.
What is that?
That's when attackers add extra words or phrases to a legitimate domain, trying to make it look like a subdomain or a related site.
So they're getting creative.
They're getting very creative.
It's all about deception.
Yes.
And exploiting our trust.
Exploiting our trust in brands.
But brand impersonation phishing takes this to a whole other level.
A whole other level because it preys on our emotional connection to the brands that we know and we love.
Right, think about those "your account has been suspended" emails.
Oh, yeah.
They make your heart skip a beat because they tap into our fear of losing access to something important.
Yes.
And that's what we call the scarcity tactic in action.
Yeah.
It pushes us to act without thinking.
And there's also the authority principle at play, too.
Authority.
Where phishers often pose as CEOs or security experts to make their messages seem more urgent and important.
It's psychological manipulation, plain and simple.
It is.
The thesis digs into these tactics. And how about the commitment and consistency principle?
Interesting.
It's fascinating how they exploit our tendency to follow through.
Yes.
Once we've already started a process, even if something feels off.
Right, like if you've already clicked a link or started filling out a form, you're more likely to just keep going even if those alarm bells are ringing in your head.
It's like they figured out the human operating system.
Yes.
And they're using it against us.
Exactly.
And it's not just the words that they use.
Right.
Brand impersonators are masters of visual mimicry.
Yes.
They can copy logos formatting, even the specific colors and fonts a brand uses to make their emails look so convincing.
It's almost like they're creating counterfeit emails.
So who are the most common targets in this brand impersonation game?
Well, the thesis mentions Microsoft, Apple, Google, Amazon, basically any major tech company with a huge user base.
Right.
And financial institutions.
Financial institutions, of course.
Always prime targets because, well, that's where the money is.
It's scary to think that these are brands we interact with almost every single day.
Yeah.
And the sheer volume of emails we get makes it so easy to let our guard down.
It does.
Speaking of real-world examples, the thesis includes a couple of slightly modified examples that we can dissect.
Great. Let's take a look.
All right, so this first one pretends to be from Truist Bank.
Truist Bank. Okay.
It warns the recipient that their account has been suspended due to unusual activity. Notice how they've included the bank's logo.
Yeah.
And even copied the formatting of a legitimate Truist email.
They did a good job.
It looks pretty authentic at first glance.
Right. And they're using language designed to trigger anxiety.
Yeah.
Temporarily suspended, unusual activity detected, all meant to make you click that link without thinking twice.
And that link would probably take you to a fake website designed to steal your login credentials.
Locally.
Sneaky. Now, here's another one posing as Booking.com.
Books.com.
Yeah. This was a bit more subtle.
Okay.
It offers a reward to loyal customers
Wow.
if they update their home address.
Interesting. They're using the promise of a reward to entice people.
It's a classic psychological ploy.
It is.
Did you notice the sender's domain is slightly off?
Let me see.
It's bookling.com
Oh.
instead of booking.com.
I see it now.
That type of squatting technique again.
Sneaky, squeaky.
Easy to miss if you're just skimming through your inbox.
Yeah, if you're not paying attention.
So now that we've seen how sneaky these phishing attacks can be,
Right.
let's talk about how to fight back.
Okay.
Starting with the more traditional approach, rule-based systems.
Okay. Rule-based.
These systems are like digital gatekeepers.
Okay.
They use predefined rules to filter out suspicious emails based on certain criteria.
So it's like having a giant checklist.
It is.
If the sender's domain isn't on our approved list, flag it.
Exactly.
Got it.
They're great at catching those more obvious phishing attempts,
Yeah.
like those with blatantly fake email addresses.
Right.
But what about the more subtle, sophisticated attacks we were just looking at?
That's where rule-based systems start to show their limitations.
Yeah.
Not very adaptable.
Right.
They can't really keep up with the constantly evolving tactics that phishers are using.
It's like trying to catch a chameleon with a butterfly net.
Exactly.
Not very effective. And what about those false positives?
False positives.
Where a perfectly legitimate email gets flagged as suspicious.
Right. That's another big drawback.
Yeah.
Creates unnecessary noise and can even erode trust in legitimate emails.
So rulebot systems are like the trusty but aging guard dog.
Okay.
Still useful in some cases, but maybe not enough to handle the modern threat landscape.
Interesting.
And that brings us to Gemini, the large language model that's shaking things up in the cybersecurity world.
Okay, Gemini.
Now, I'll admit, when I first heard about LLMs, my brain went into a bit of a tailspin.
I can imagine.
Can you break down what an LLM is
Sure.
in a way that
Yeah.
doesn't require a computer science degree?
Think of an LLM as a super-powered language processor.
Okay.
Unlike rule-based systems that rely on simple keyword matching,
Right.
LLMs can actually understand the context and meaning of text,
Really?
almost like a human.
Wow, so it's not just scanning for keywords like account suspended or verify your information.
Yeah.
It's looking at the whole picture,
The whole picture.
analyzing the nuances of language to spot those subtle signs of deception.
Exactly. It's a game changer. And what's really fascinating is that LLMs, like Gemini,
Yeah.
can analyze the entire email,
Okay.
including all the headers and formatting, to get a much more complete understanding of the message.
So it's not just looking at one email in isolation.
Yeah.
It's analyzing it within the context of the entire conversation.
Correct. And another big advantage is
Right.
that Gemini is multilingual.
Multilingual.
It can analyze emails in different languages without any issues.
That's crucial in today's globalized world.
It is.
Okay, so we've got this super smart LLM that can understand language like a human. But how do we teach it to be a phishing detective?
That's where prompt-based learning comes in.
Prompt-based learning.
It's a way of training LLMs by giving them specific instructions and examples.
So instead of reprogramming the
Right.
entire model, we just give it some hints
Hints.
and let its natural language abilities take over.
Exactly. It's much more efficient and flexible. Think of it like this.
Okay.
You wouldn't teach someone to drive by rewiring their brain, right? You'd give them instructions and let them learn through practice.
I see.
Same concept with LLMs.
Okay, the thesis uses the term few-shot prompting.
Few-shot prompting.
What does that mean exactly?
It means we give the LLM a small number of labeled examples to learn from.
Oh, so it's like showing a child a few pictures of cats and dogs
Yeah,
and saying these are cats and these are dogs.
exactly.
The child learns to distinguish between the two based on those examples.
Right.
So it's like showing Gemini a handful of phishing and legitimate emails and saying these are the bad guys. These are the good guys. Now go find more bad guys.
Precisely. It's amazing how quickly LLMs can learn from just a few examples.
Wow, so prompt-based learning sounds pretty straightforward.
Yeah,
But I imagine there's an art to crafting those prompts.
there is.
The thesis mentions prompt engineering as a key challenge.
It is a challenge.
What makes it so tricky?
Well, you have to be very careful how you phrase those instructions.
Right.
You want to make sure that the LLM understands exactly what you want it to do,
Uh-huh.
but you also want to avoid triggering any of its safety mechanisms.
Wait, safety mechanisms. What do you mean by that?
LLMs are trained on massive amounts of data.
Right.
And some of that data can be harmful or biased.
Uh-huh.
So they have built-in safeguards to prevent them from being used for malicious purposes or generating inappropriate content.
Makes sense. We don't want Gemini accidentally becoming a phishing email generator.
Exactly.
But sometimes those safety mechanisms can be a bit overzealous.
A little bit.
The researchers found that even some of their perfectly harmless prompts were getting flagged.
Yeah, it's a delicate balancing act.
Right.
You have to be clear and specific in your instructions,
Mm-hmm.
but you also have to avoid anything that might set off those alarm bells.
So it's a delicate balancing act.
It is.
You've got to find that sweet spot where the LLM understands what you want,
Yeah.
but doesn't shut down or go off on a tangent.
It's one of the biggest challenges in prompt engineering.
Fascinating. So they've trained Gemini.
Yes.
They've carefully crafted their prompts.
Mm-hmm.
How did they actually put it to the test? Did it live up to the hype?
Well, let's get into that next.
Yeah.
They ran both Gemini and the rule-based system through a series of tests,
Okay.
comparing their performance in detecting phishing emails from a data set of over 1,000 real-world examples.
All right, this suspense is killing me.
Mm-hmm.
Let's dive into those results and see who emerged victorious in this phishing detection showdown.
Okay.
But we'll save that for part 2. Stay tuned.
Welcome back.
I am so ready to hear about these results.
And you and me both.
Okay, so we're looking at how Gemini,
Yeah.
that large language model, performed against a traditional rule-based system
Mm-hmm.
in detecting those phishing emails.
Right.
It's the ultimate test,
It is.
cutting-edge AI,
Right.
versus the tried-and-true programming.
Yeah.
Who will reign supreme in the fight against phishing?
Let's find out.
Okay, so let's start with the underdog,
Okay.
the rule-based system.
All right.
How did they even set it up for this challenge?
Well, the setup was fairly straightforward.
Okay.
They created a set of rules based on common phishing indicators.
Oh, so kind of like the spam filters we have on our email accounts.
Yeah, exactly, except this one's laser focused on brand impersonation.
Makes sense, simple and to the point.
Mm-hmm.
But we already know that rule-based systems have their limitations.
They do.
So how did this one fare against the cunning tactics of phishers?
Well, they tested it on that same data set of over 1,000 emails,
Uh-huh.
and the results were, shall we say, underwhelming.
Uh-oh.
It only correctly identified a small fraction of the brand impersonation attempts.
So all those cleverly disguised emails we saw earlier,
Yeah.
the ones mimicking Truist Bank, and Booking.com,
Yeah.
this system would have missed most of them.
Probably rule-based systems are just too rigid to
Well-
adapt to the ever-changing strategies of phishers.
So they're great at catching the low-hanging fruit,
Yes,
but struggle with the more sophisticated attacks.
exactly. It's like bringing a knife to a gunfight.
Right, okay, so the rule-based system struck out.
Struck out.
What about Gemini?
Gemini.
How did they train this AI prodigy to become a phishing detective?
This is where prompt-based learning really shines.
Okay.
They crafted a detailed system prompt to essentially give Gemini its job description as a cybersecurity expert.
So they gave it like a resume and a cover letter?
Well, not exactly,
Right.
but they provided it with clear instructions on what it was supposed to do.
Got it.
But they didn't stop there.
Okay.
They also gave Gemini a set of example emails, both legitimate and phishing,
Okay.
to showcase the different types of attacks it might encounter.
So like giving a rookie detective a case file
Yeah.
and saying, study this
Yeah.
and learn from the best.
Exactly.
Did they say how many examples they used?
They started with 10, but quickly realized that wasn't enough
Not enough.
to capture the complexity of phishing tactics.
Right.
They ended up using 20 examples covering a wide range of scenarios.
The more examples, the better, right? Gives the AI more to learn from.
Absolutely.
But did they just throw these examples at Gemini and hope for the best, or was there some method to the madness?
Definitely a method.
Okay.
They carefully structured the examples within the prompt,
Mm-hmm.
using the same JSON format they used for the actual emails to be classified.
Oh, wow.
This helped Gemini understand how the different pieces of information related to each other.
So they were giving Gemini more than just a glimpse into the world of phishing.
Mm-hmm.
They were providing it with a structured learning experience.
Exactly like a mini training manual,
Nice.
complete with visual aids to help Gemini grasp the nuances of phishing detection.
Smart move. But even with the best training, I imagine there were still some bumps along the way.
Oh,
Did the thesis mention any challenges they ran into during this training process?
yeah, as we mentioned earlier, prompt engineering is a delicate art. One challenge they encountered was triggering Gemini's safety mechanisms.
Oh, those built-in safeguards.
Yeah.
Designed to prevent the AI from being misused.
Exactly. It's like trying to teach a dog to protect your house without making it overly aggressive.
Good analogy.
Yeah.
Okay, so the researchers had to constantly tweak and refine their prompts
Yeah.
to make sure that Gemini understood the task without setting off any alarms.
We're right. It's a delicate balancing act.
Mhm.
You want to give the AI enough freedom to learn and explore,
Right.
but also keep it within safe boundaries.
Did they mention any other hurdles they faced?
Well, they noticed that Gemini could be a little too verbose in its responses.
Too verbose.
It would sometimes go off on tangents or include unnecessary information in its output.
So it's like a student who knew the answer but couldn't resist showing off a little.
Something like that. To address this, they implemented what's called an output schema.
An output schema.
Essentially a template that defines the specific format they wanted for their results.
So they gave Gemini a clear structure to follow,
Exactly.
which helped to streamline its responses and make the analysis more efficient.
It did. The output became much more consistent and focused,
Right.
making it easier for the researchers to evaluate Gemini's performance.
So they've got Gemini all trained up,
All trained up,
ready to go.
ready to go.
They've carefully crafted their prompts
Mm-hmm.
and fine-tuned the output.
Fine-tuned it.
How did they actually test the system in a real-world scenario?
They used a batch processing approach, feeding Gemini groups of emails at a time.
Interesting. So instead of analyzing each email individually,
Yeah,
they gave Gemini a whole stack to work through.
exactly. This was more efficient
Oh.
and played to Gemini's strength in handling long contexts. It could analyze an entire conversation thread or series of emails related to a particular brand
Okay.
to spot patterns and inconsistencies.
It's like giving a detective multiple pieces of evidence to examine, rather than just one isolated clue.
Exactly. And I'm guessing they had to have some backup plans in place,
I would hope so.
just in case Gemini ran into any technical glitches.
Right, right.
Of course, they implemented retry mechanisms for network errors and timeouts,
Okay.
making sure Gemini could handle any unexpected hiccups.
Very thorough.
They also validated Gemini's output
Validated.
to catch any inconsistencies or errors.
Wow. It sounds like they were covering all their bases.
They were.
Okay, enough with the anticipation. Let's get to the heart of the matter.
Okay.
How did Gemini actually perform? Did it live up to the hype?
It exceeded expectations.
No way.
Remember how the rule-based system only caught a handful of phishing attempts?
Yeah, like a tiny fraction.
Gemini correctly identified a significantly higher percentage of them.
Really? So it was like Sherlock Holmes,
It was.
noticing those subtle clues that the rule-based system completely missed.
Exactly. And not only did it catch more phishing emails, but it was also much more accurate in its flagging.
Yeah.
There were far fewer false positives.
So fewer legitimate emails got caught in the crossfire.
Exactly. That's a win-win.
So Gemini is the clear victor in this phishing detection duel.
It seems that way. The thesis concludes that LLMs like Gemini have the potential to revolutionize email security.
Wow.
But as with any new technology,
Right.
there are still some limitations and potential downsides to consider.
That's a great point. Every technological advancement comes with its own set of challenges and ethical considerations.
It does.
And that brings us to the big question.
Mm.
What does the future hold for email security in the age of AI?
Let's explore those intriguing possibilities in part 3.
Stay tuned. We're back, ready to tackle the future of email security. It's so cool to see how AI is changing the game.
It is. It's exciting.
But like you said, there are always those what-if questions.
Yeah,
You know, when new tech comes onto the scene.
absolutely. Got to think about the potential downsides, the unintended consequences.
Exactly. It's like every solution brings a new set of problems.
Right.
So let's put on those futurist hats and think about some of those what-ifs.
Oh, okay.
What happens if the bad guys
Yeah.
start using these powerful AI tools?
Oh.
Could we end up in like an AI arms race
Oh, interesting.
with phishers using LLMs to create these super sophisticated attacks?
That's a valid concern as LLMs become more accessible.
Right.
It's certainly possible that attackers could leverage them to generate highly personalized phishing emails.
So instead of those generic messages, we might start seeing emails that seem to come from like our closest friends
Uh-huh.
or family members using language that's tailored to our fears.
Yeah, it's a chilling thought.
Oh,
Imagine an email that looks exactly like it's from your best friend.
right.
Urging you to click a link, it would be so hard to
It'd be
resist.
so easy to fall for that. And if the bad guys start using AI to up their game,
Yeah.
do we need to fight fire with fire?
That's a tricky question.
Should we develop even more powerful LLM?
It's a dilemma. An AI arms race could lead to a dangerous escalation,
Right.
with both sides trying to outsmart each other.
Constantly one-upping each other.
And it's important to remember technology is only one part of the solution.
Right. We can't just rely on AI to solve all our cybersecurity problems.
No, we need to be thinking about the human factors as well.
Exactly. Education and awareness are key. We need to help people develop those critical thinking skills
Yes.
so they can spot suspicious emails no matter how sophisticated the tech behind them is.
It all comes back to the fundamentals, right?
It really does. So
Yeah.
even in the age of AI, it all comes back to vigilance awareness
Mm,
and a healthy dose of skepticism.
absolutely.
What if we become too reliant on these AI systems?
Interesting.
Could we lose our critical thinking skills?
That's a great point. It's like relying too much on GPS navigation.
Yeah,
You might just drive off a cliff.
exactly. We can't let technology do all the thinking for us.
LLMs like Gemini are powerful tools, but they should augment, not replace our own judgment.
They're just tools.
We need a balance, between the power of AI and our own ability to think critically.
About the info we see online.
Mm,
So the message is clear, stay vigilant, stay informed.
yeah,
Don't be afraid to question even the most official-looking emails.
absolutely.
Trust your gut.
If something feels off.
Yeah, better to be safe than sorry.
Couldn't agree more. Cybersecurity is a shared responsibility.
We all have a role to play.
We do in protecting ourselves and each other.
This has been an awesome deep dive
It has.
into the world of phishing brand impersonation. The future of email security. I feel like I've learned a ton,
Me too.
and I hope our listeners have too.
It's been a pleasure exploring this topic with you.
Likewise, huge thanks to you, dear listener, for joining us.
Yes, thank you.
We hope you've gained some valuable insights and tips to stay safe in the digital world.
Stay safe out there.
Knowledge is power, and in the world of cybersecurity, it's our best defense.
It is.
Until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, and keep diving deep.
Yeah.